Hey guys, Disler Magic here, and it's time for a very overlooked but awesome card. This was in my deck fairly recently. I mean, it's been a while since this is legal, but this isn't exactly from 15 years ago like a lot of these cards. Now, this one is so overlooked by people for the simple reason that I think maybe it's a common or they're just impatient and like ultra consistency, but they also tend to fail to realize the side effect of this card. There's a certain psychology behind it mixed with its absolute power, and it's an aura. Now, I say that because obviously the subtype is aura, it is an enchantment, it does go on a creature, but that's really where the aura part ends. It doesn't act at all like an aura, it doesn't even do anything to the creature it's on. It basically is like a flashback spell, but then you look at the cost and you think, oh my gosh. Now, there's a certain rule in the game where it usually kind of costs blah to do blah. Like, in general, it costs 3 to counter a spell. If you want to counter a spell for 2, they're going to put a restriction on it, like negate, essence scatter. Those are opposites. It can do any non-creature or any creature spell. And then you get the 1-cost ones, and it's like really restrictive. Like, Dispel can only stop instants. Turn Aside can only stop spells that target permanents, not players. Oh, or spells that have no target whatsoever. So in general, it costs 3 to counter a spell, and obviously I'm talking, modern 8th edition on. The spell literally called Counterspell only costs 2. But they realized that for game balancing reasons that was a bit of a mistake, and then they did not include it in modern and haven't reprinted it since. I disagree, but anyway, card draw, very, very consistent the same way, where it almost always costs about the same, but then they print just oodles of worse versions of it. It's usually at best about 1 card per 1.5 mana. That's like the universal starting point for most spells. You might see an exception, but then that's the second rule of, traditional ratios, I guess you could call it. You could call it the unwritten rules of Magic, but I think I'm not going to. Now, the exceptions go the same way. Like, if you want to draw, 3 cards for 3 mana, then you probably have to, discard 1 afterwards or something. They usually put some kind of restriction on it, and a lot of times you'll see, exceptions in black, which honestly has a completely different card draw rule, pretty much. But, if you want to draw 2, you'll just take 2 damage. Or I should say, if you want to draw 2 cards for 1 mana each instead of 1.5, Sign in Blood, one of the most famous cards ever, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. And of course, that's also limited to a sorcery, which, sorcery versus instant speed for card draw, it's almost irrelevant. I mean, yeah, you could do it during your opponent's end step, which means you freed up your mana for some kind of kill spell or just any kind of instant. So it gives you options, but it's not that big of a thing. But still, that's another thing that they use to kind of reduce the power of a spell. So your golden average ratio for just, I want to draw cards, no side effects, no special this, no return a land to hand, no blow up a creature, none of that. I just want to draw some damn cards. None of this fancy crap. I just want to draw my cards, damn it. Just let me draw my cards. I'm top decking here, damn it. I'm getting way too excited about draw this time. Okay, then you're looking at your divination. Okay, that's your classic spell right there. Sorcery, cost 3, no double blue, which is another, let's power it down, let's make it double colored, and then draw 2 cards. So that's your vanilla draw spell right there. And I'm sure there's probably in some color in some set something that says draw 2 for 2 with no side effect. I don't know. Actually, I feel like if there was, it would be played in Modern instead of Serum Visions. Actually, with Serum Visions, you get 1 card for 1, but then you also get to scry. But that's the thing with it. It really only applies to cards above more than 1, because it's stupid to draw 1. If you think about it, you're burning a card to go get a card. Well, you could have just taken that draw card, the draw spell, out of your deck and put in the card that you wanted to draw. Then every time you wouldn't even have to cast a spell, you could just have the card in your hand. So drawing 2+ is where the ratio really comes in. So I mean, let's look at Dragonlord's Prerogative. You get 4 cards for 6 mana. There you go. That's a pretty typical card. They did elevate it to an instant. They did make it double blue too as well, which, I mean, come on. When it costs 6, I don't think you have trouble coming up with 2 blue. But, yeah, 1.5 mana per card. I mean, there it is. No downside, no discard, no lose life, no sack a creature, tap a creature, nothing. So what if I told you that there's a common, and it's an aura, and it draws 2 cards for 2 mana? There is almost no downside. I mean, clearly there's a downside. I mean, come on. You can't just cast an aura on a creature, it does nothing and it draws 2 cards. That would be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So it was recently legal, it's a common, it's an aura, and it draws 2 cards for 2 with almost no disadvantage. Can you name the card? I hope so, because you got about 3 seconds before I say it. Coming in from the amazing Theros set, we've got Fate Foretold. Not even double blue. This card is obscenely powerful. So you enchant target creature. When Fate Foretold enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so it immediately replaces itself and you're good to go right off the bat. Then, when enchanted creature dies, its controller draws a card. So basically, you get 1 card draw completely for free because this spell replaces itself immediately. That's not a great way to think of it because it's not like truly a cantrip, but I mean, you could call it a delayed trigger cantrip, I guess. Now, I can see why this isn't exactly played in Modern because you'd have to lose a creature to get the second card, and if you never get the second card, who cares? You just won the game, obviously, because your creature is still on the battlefield, and you probably put this on a pretty big creature. I mean, you'd be swinging with the creature and blocking with the creature every damn turn because you want your card. So you'd probably put this on a 1/1 Death Toucher or your biggest creature so that if your biggest creature gets killed, you can now draw a card to hopefully replace it. In the meantime, like I said, the card's invisible. It just replaces itself with a completely different card immediately for 2 mana. Now, most cantrips, as they're nicknamed, cost 1 and they're instants, but this is close enough. Now, here's the fun part. People never realize this. You can throw this on an opponent's creature. So if it's something that they usually sacrifice or, like, you know, it's their 1/1 Death Toucher that you know they're going to chump block with, maybe they'll reconsider now. Like, if you're top decking and they think they've got a pretty good board state, they might let that swing through, which, you know, may or may not benefit you. That's a little transparent. But what if you have 1 card in hand and they don't know if it's a boost spell or not? Well, maybe they won't block with their 1 remaining creature because if you kill it, you're going to get a card, and card advantage when you're both top decking or close to it is pretty darn important in general. It also, I mean, it can just have a psychology of it. Whether it's on one of your creatures, one of their creatures, whether they're attacking, you're blocking, or the other way around, it's something else to consider. So it just screws with stuff. So whatever they were planning to do that was an ideal plan, now they might not do it in the loosest, fuzziest logic terms. It just opens the door. It opens the possibility that they will take an action that is less than ideal just to avoid this. Now, the most obvious thing is, what if you have a deck that does sacrifice creatures? It would probably have to mix black, because that's their thing, but if you have a card that says sacrifice a creature and then blah 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 happens, especially sacrifice a creature, draw a card, or like an Antuku Grim Haruspex deck or something like that. Well, now you get an extra card, plus you got a card when you cast this, so it replaced itself. Like I said, it's invisible in the deck. The best part about this is somebody could be like, oh man, I can't give him 2 cards. I don't even want him to get that card. I'm going to cast a counterspell and counterspell Fate Foretold. Holy crap, is that a waste of a counterspell in almost any case. But the sheer power of it is there. I mean, 2 cards for 2 mana. Yeah, you have to wait a little bit potentially for the second one, but you might have more control over it than you think. I mean, you might have to literally just wait until the next action on the stack after this resolves. Well, I suppose you wouldn't sacrifice a creature and then target it. That wouldn't work, but you get what I mean. Start a new stack. The very next stack, okay, you sack the creature, there's your second card. Boom, you just drew 2 for 2. So the sheer draw power of this card for its insanely low cost means that, is it really good in Commander? Not really, because if this costs like 3 and you got the card right away, in other words, divination, that's probably better because you probably have the mana. But in a super fast deck, it just keeps your draw going. I mean, this was, if you recall, in my banana deck. That's one of the 2 decks that I put it in. I need to draw cards every way possible. That thing is running Bident of Thassa, where when you hit, you draw a card. It's running Military Intelligence, where every time you swing with 2 or more, you immediately draw a card before you go to declare blockers. It was also running Font of Fortunes, which comes out for 2, and then you pay 2 at any time to sacrifice it and draw 2 cards. But that's 2 cards for 4 mana, you can just split it. So if you're completely land screwed on turn 2, you drop out the font. If you're still land screwed or almost regardless on turn 3, you would pop it and draw 2 cards, and between the one you drew that turn And the 2 cards you just drew, that's 3. If 1/3 of your deck is land, you probably just picked up a land. So that's, it's not a terrible card, but this is just better. I mean, this is just, I've got 1 creature on the field, plus that deck runs tons of 1/1 Death Touchers. I think there's like 12. So the early game draw power is really there, and because of that, I think maybe this might find its way into Modern into some really obscure deck that really needs more cards. It's honestly kind of a second-rate card compared to like Anticipate. I think that's better mathematically overall, but it's still up there on the power scale. So I just wanted to make an OBA about it because it's just good. It's very overlooked. It's very awesome. It's very second-rate compared to some other methods of draw, but it's still pretty darn good for 2 mana. I mean, come on, it's 2 mana, people. It's 2 cards for 2 mana. I mean, that's what I just can't get over about it. So hopefully this card finds a home in one of your decks and you guys have some fun with it. I'll see you guys next video.